James, so good to see you again. Welcome back to Kombucha Camp. We're always happy to see you and hear what's up with you. How's everything going?
It's going really well. Yeah. I was just thinking to myself, gosh, when did we first meet? Was that in 2007? I mean, like it was a while ago,
It was
right?
Santa Clara. Was it Santa Clara?
Oh,
No, we
Santa
met before
Clara.
Santa Clara.
So, yeah, I thought we met in LA, did we not?
I think we met in LA. You're right. That's why I think 2007 is probably correct.
Yeah, because I was thinking about just when did I first start, going down the path of kombucha and just fermentation. And I was like, gosh, well, I got out of culinary school in 2004, and it was just basically right afterwards, I got right into it. And I think that 2007 is when we met. Farmers markets, right?
Yes, it was definitely farmers markets. Let me ask you this real quick. Did you learn about kombucha in culinary school?
I did.
That's pretty cool. So
It was a
that's awesome.
it was a unique culinary school. It doesn't exist anymore, but it was called the Natural Gourmet. It was in New York. Anne Marie Coleman was the founder, and she's passed. And since then, I think they sold the program to some other school, and I don't think it's the same program anymore. But it was a really cool program, and then it was teaching just all these different health modalities. We learned about Ayurveda there. We learned about wise traditions and Weston A. Price. We learned about fermentation, kombuchas, kefir. I mean, we learned, you name it, we learned it. And I got out of that and was just really intrigued, particularly with the fermentation and raw. I was really into the raw diet when I first got out of culinary school. It was fascinating to me.
It was definitely a phase I went through in LA. Like it's definitely, if you lived in Los Angeles or live or move out here, at some point you're going to encounter the raw food culture. But in fact, the very first time I ever had raw food was at Cafe Gratitude, the one in the Mission. And that was the same day I met kombucha. So it was really interesting, this sort of confluence of influential experiences that all happened on the same day when I first met kombucha, and that was part of it. And it was like, right. I don't know if you remember the original Cafe Gratitude. They had the tables with the board game. That was
Yes.
essentially what it had
Yes.
initially started as, and then it turned into this restaurant. And I believe all the San Francisco locations have since closed, and there's one or two down here in Los Angeles. But it was a dynamic time for sure in those early 2000s, with all of this information starting to percolate up if you were on the coast or part of sort of the burgeoning food scene at that time.
Yeah, and obviously kombucha and the raw food movement really went together. I mean, they were very much informing each other, right?
We got to digest all that raw food.
Yeah, there's something.
The kombucha helped for sure.
Now, I'm curious. So I was doing it, and then I started my meal delivery service in LA, and that was around 2008. And I ran that till 2015, basically. So like a 7 or 8 years, actually 2016. But I remember at one point there was this cookbook called like Eating for Geeks or something. So there was this guy who was like science-based, and he had done all this studying around it. And we had a phone conversation because I really enjoyed his cookbook. And I was talking to him about kombucha, and he was like, I'm not so sure about it. I feel like it could be causing stomach issues or cancers. And I'm like, what? Like, that seems like the exact opposite of what it is for. So I'm curious, how would you answer someone kind of asking those kind of questions these days about like, but is it actually, yes, I understand that fermentation is good for me, that probiotics are good for me, but is there any question of like, or concern about stomach health with it?
This is a great question. I would say most people don't realize it, but acid reflux isn't caused by too much acid. It's caused by not having enough.
Right.
And so when you counteract that with a base or an antacid, you are neutralizing the symptoms, but you're allowing the cause to perpetuate. And I think a lot of people don't realize that, in fact, they need more vinegar, more sour, more bitter. These are the flavors of health and digestion. Now, that said, there certainly are people who can be sensitive to kombucha. She's a powerful detoxifier. And if your immune system isn't ready for that, that can be challenging because now you're releasing toxins into your system. They have to be flushed out through hydrolysis or going to the bathroom. But in terms of causing an issue, it's probably more like irritating something that already exists. And this is why we say trust your gut. And trust your gut isn't trust your taste buds, it's trust the biofeedback loop that you're creating. And so if you're consuming kombucha and you're not feeling so great, there could be a wide range of different things going on. But we always say, listen to your body. And if that's the feedback you're getting, cut down on the amount you're consuming, increase your water consumption, and then maybe gradually increase it when your body regains a homeostasis. So maybe it's that, maybe it's something else. That said, especially people who have a histamine allergy, it definitely could be the kombucha or the cheese or the wine, because those things have natural histamines, which your body is, when it's functioning properly, is able to process and digest. And these things are really delicious. However, when we have extreme dysbiosis, that's when we see we're not able to tolerate some of these really great fermented foods. And so more work just needs to be done, rebuilding that mucosal lining, rebuilding the gut lining, so that way you can down the road then reincorporate these foods into your life. But it's always, put a little in, take a little out, and just really listening to how your body responds to see what's the right amount for you.
Now, what do you think about, because kombucha has definitely become more popular. I mean, when we first were doing this stuff, you could barely find it in grocery stores, right? I mean, it was only just beginning. Mm-hmm. And now it's got its own refrigerator, right? It's its own section. And a lot of people, though, are treating it like soda. So they're drinking a lot of it. And then, of course, there's some companies that are putting out inauthentic kombucha. So it is more like juice or soda in that regard sometimes, right?
Well, I would say there's a kombucha for everyone, and a kombucha is still going to be a better for you choice than a soda. And here's why: it's fermented. And that's true even of the products that are pasteurized and from concentrate. And I get it, right? I'm the purist too. I only drink home brew or GTs. Those are the ones that I have around me. So I'm consuming those authentic products all the time. But here's the reality: we're so toxified. There's so much junk. There's so much stuff in our food supply, in our water, in our air. You and I know this because we've been, this is why we gravitate towards natural foods and traditional foods, is because we see how these poisons are having a negative impact on health overall. And so my position is always going to be there. Any kombucha is better than no kombucha. And people want to drink a soda, right? Like, they're not getting enough water anyways. But if you're drinking a kombucha, especially if they're the lighter flavor profiles that we see a lot of these from concentrate brands or, pasteurized brands, or maybe they're sterile filtered so that all the alcohol is removed, those brands have a specific purpose in that they help to onboard people, right? Like you and me, James, we had that first sip of kombucha and we were like, oh, give me all, I feel alive. Like, this is exciting. A lot of people, that's like, oh my gosh, this was horrible. Get it away from me. I never want to have it again. And, now you're missing out on the benefit of the fermentation if you're not able to tolerate, those more intense flavor profiles. And so I think it's good that we have some of these softer profiles bringing people into the category, because here's what happens. And I've seen it happen to a lot of folks, and even talked to some of my commercial clients who are like, yeah, we have these softer flavors, but within a couple months, people are craving the more intense flavor profiles. Your body knows what's good for it. Like, we have so much intelligence and wisdom contained within this, skin suit, if you will. And I think that it starts to become something you desire. I'm going to pause. I have something else to share, but what do you think of that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, I talk about the palate a lot, right? So the fact that here in the U.S. we're very salty and sweet centric for our palate, and the sours, the bitters, the umamis, like those are the three flavors that I really like to focus on, because we're so deficient in those flavors in the standard American diet. And I find that when you start to introduce those, to your point, even in softer forms and lighter forms, you can change someone's entire life. I was just talking to a series of practitioners just last night, and I was saying how a lot of people, they undermine the power of the palate. The palate actually informs not only our cravings, but our desires of our adventuresome, how adventurous we are with our food. And we, back in the day when I had that meal delivery service, we would do these two-week sugar control detoxes where we remove certain foods, certain sweets from people's diets. And in 2 weeks, their sense of taste completely changed. They couldn't do the things they were previously doing. Their body wouldn't let them because it was too sweet now, or it was too intense or something, whatever it was. And they also found more joy in natural things, like strawberries were more naturally sweet to them versus not being sweet at all, for example. So it's very powerful.
Couldn't agree more, because I think that this is so many of these chemicals are blocking up our taste buds. And this is why people have such an adverse reaction sometimes to kombucha up front, because that sour pickly flavor is something they're not totally expecting and that they're not used to consuming. And so those, in fact, are the people who need kombucha and fermented beverages the most, because it does that great job. That face that people make for kombucha, that's what I make for sweets. Like if it is too sweet, I am like, oh, get this out of my mouth. This is disgusting. I don't want this anywhere near me. It's not to say I don't enjoy a sweet every now and then, but really my tolerance for sweets, it's the inverse, right? So I like the sour and the tangy, and the sweet is just too cloying for me. And so I only want to consume it in a little bit. And I think that this is what fermented foods does, is it helps to clear that palate, and it resets your expectations so that you can not only taste the flavors more, but the nutrients more. And I think those nutrients, that's really why we eat. The whole point of why we put anything in our mouth is because we need to absorb nutrients from it. And, this whole notion that like vegetables don't taste good. Well, they don't if you've been hammering your taste buds with sugar pops and, corn puffs. And so
Sure.
you can't actually taste the flavors and extract the nutrients. But what I was going to say, and I think it plays in nicely with what you just said, was a friend of mine, she was talking about picky eaters and how do you get a picky eater to start, improving what they're willing to consume. And she said, they don't even have to drink the kombucha or the sauerkraut. Just hold it in your mouth for 20 seconds, 30 seconds, and then spit it out. And she says, usually within a week or two, they're just consuming it because now you've gotten used to it. And again, that's because we have so much DNA wisdom that our body truly knows what's best for it when we clear the way and allow ourselves to fully experience that. And I love that you were ahead of the curve with that meal delivery program. And, and you're always ahead of the curve, James. And that's why I love the product that you have right now, Pluck. Tell us a little bit about Pluck and what it does.
Yeah, well, it feeds that umami that I was just talking about. Umami is naturally found in organ meats, and similar to, I think, what motivates you around kombucha and the health benefits. I also have attached my star on organ meats. I believe that organ meats are the most nutrient dense food on the planet. I believe that we are struggling to get them in our diets, and I also believe that that's why we are suffering. We have so much chronic disease, and so I'm just doing my part to support people in that. And Pluck is in my opinion, kind of the gateway, the easiest entry point into getting organ meats in your diet, because what we've done is we've taken the freeze-dried powdered organ meats, we've combined them with organic spices and herbs, and now it's a seasoning. It's a superfood seasoning that you can put on anything. You can literally mix it into food. You can use it as a finishing salt at the end for maximum flavor, maximum nutrition, and it just makes food taste better. And to our previous conversation, it starts to introduce this new flavor into people's mouth effortlessly. Like, for example, I have a lot of families, they put it on popcorn, right? So the kids eat popcorn, they get that flavor. And now we get feedback that they are now more adventurous and willing to try new things because it's changing their palate. So it's an incredibly powerful tool. And it's very simple to use. You just use it like a seasoning.
Well, and who would think in this day and age that we still have nutritional deficiencies, and yet we do. And part of that, as we know, is when you create vitamins in a synthetic environment, that changes their chemical shape. And as human beings, we've evolved to instantly uptake certain nutrients because we have thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of, who knows how many years of evolution and consuming these foods in their more raw living forms or cooked, whatever the case may be. But we had a history of really understanding the nutrients and vitality that raw liver and kidneys and heart and all of these things would give us. And now we've been so trained by the styrofoam packages and wrapped in plastic and never really connecting with our food source that we think of, tongue and brains and some of these different foods that, again, have been part of our traditional foods for so long are now reviled or considered weird or gross. When the reality is, like, they got to go somewhere, and why not into our bodies and nourish us just as they have our ancestors for hundreds, thousands of years.
Well, and I love that when you were talking about kombucha, how you introduced this idea of you don't even have to drink it. You could just put it in your mouth. This idea of a little goes a long way, like little steps, right? I think we have kind of taken that, I don't know, it was maybe the 90s. Like there was that mantra of like, work hard, play hard, this idea of like, everything's got to be all in intense, it's all or nothing. And even I don't think that that's the mantra as much anymore, but I think we still carry that into many choices we make. And I think sometimes people are looking for these big movements of like, if I'm going to start going to the gym and eating this way and exercising this way, then I want to see results in 24 hours. It's just like not going to happen. And what I love though about the little bit each day, and I try to tell this to people, is because they go, this is the question we get a lot with Pluck. It's like, well, how much am I really getting? How much organ meats am I really getting? And I'm like, do you realize you're getting none right now? You're not eating any of them. Okay. So if I give you a seasoning, yes, it's only going to have micro dosing. Okay. It's not a lot, but you're now getting something that you were not before. And if you use it every meal, that's 3 times a day, 2 or 3 times a day, sometimes 4 for some people. Now you're starting to get more, and you just keep doing that every day, little movements every day. And suddenly you are now no longer nutrient deficient. Like you're actually like feeling better. You're getting better sleep. Your skin issues have gone away. You're thinking clearer. Like you suddenly have all these abilities that you didn't know were being masked by your standard American diet,
Truly. And what I love about this is, like, what are you actually feeding? Right? We think it is this giant human body organism, but the reality is we're feeding the microbes. And so having them in those micro doses, I wonder if that doesn't actually have a better net effect than, consuming a massive piece of liver, which, you have to relearn your enjoyment of that flavor profile and the traditional methods in which they were prepared with the milk and the, all of that was designed to make the texture more palatable, to make it more flavorful and delicious. And these things are delicious, especially when they're prepared really well. But again, it's not realistic to think like, oh, I need more liver, I'm going to go buy a bunch of calf's liver and cook it up in the pan here and eat it, because that's going to be intense and maybe too much, honestly. Like it's probably better if you're starting at 0 to have the Pluck, to build up the desire and the taste and the nutritional benefits from it before then tackling the bigger piece of pate or whatever it might be.
I completely agree. And I think it is, I think you're making so much sense. That it's not about, like just one and done. And it's not about like, okay, just do this forever. It's like, no, it's just the starting point that we can all go further if we want. But this idea that a little bit actually might work better for your body initially than doing tons of something, because we all know this to be true, that if you've ever taken a supplement and drinking lots of water, either or, you'll notice, and I don't know, at least I experienced this, it's like certain supplements or certain amounts of protein powders make me need to urinate faster, sooner.
Well, your body wants to process it and get it out.
And guess what my body's getting out? The excess protein, the excess minerals, the excess vitamin. It's just you're peeing out the expensive supplement you just took. So that right there tells you, yes, if I just did a little bit instead of so much, I probably will absorb it and I'll probably utilize it easier and better, opposed to my body being like, too much, get out, evacuate,
Well, and now I just had the thought like, ooh, what if I put some Pluck in my kombucha? I don't know. That just sounds really good, actually. I'm gonna have to try that and share that with people because I think it's actually gonna be quite delicious. What I love about kombucha is she's a blank canvas in that you can do the fruity, you can do some of the more sweet flavors, and you can do more savory. You can do the jalapeno and the tomatoes and
Right.
make it something because vinegar, we have it in savory situations as well as sweet situations. So I think that's really fantastic.
Yeah,
Well,
you could totally use like the spicy might be really good with a fruit,
or cucumber or
yeah,
mango
cucumber.
or
But alternatively, you could just use pure and then add that to whatever flavor because pure is just the 100% organ meat, but it's just neutral, so it goes with anything. You can go
So I
sweet
bet
or
a
savory.
bit of minerals and stuff would actually shift the flavor profile slightly in a really positive way. It has been so awesome to catch up with you and hear about Pluck. I love the flavor profile. It's so delicious, and I know it comes in a variety of flavors. And in fact, we're giving some away. So why don't you let everybody know about this great prize we're offering?
Yeah, where you can actually get a gift card for $25 so that you can pick whichever flavor you'd like.
And what flavors do you have?
We have original, which is also kind of our all-purpose. That's the first one we came out with. It's our probably our most popular. We have spicy mild, and then we have a zesty garlic, which has no nightshades, no seeds for those that are
Mm,
sensitive to those two things. And then we have pure. Pure is just that 100% organ meat. You can add it to smoothies, sauces, ground meats, kombucha, whatever you want.
that's really awesome. Thanks again, James. Always great to connect with you. And where can we find Pluck?
Eatpluck.com. Thank you so much for having me, Hannah. And you can find us on socials at Eatpluck as well.
Thanks. Have a good one. Happy
Take
World
care.
Kombucha Day.
Yay.